Hey Nerf Herder, I'm Addy Thomas.
I am Ben Milton.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Certain Point of View as we explore the Star Wars. Oh my god, it's all falling! As we explore the Star Wars galaxy together.
And avoid falling items in my basement, apparently.
Yeah, we'll leave that in. This week we're going to be talking about Star Wars comics. We're talking about volumes 3 through 5 of the Marvel Star Wars comics as we are in our quest to catch up with where they are in the Star Wars comics.
We're so far behind.
I know, right? We just let it go way too far. But we're exploring it now. We're catching up. We're almost there. We're not too far away. We just finished up Poe Dameron recently. We're catching up on the main Star Wars title. Then we've got Dr. Aphra to catch up on. And then I'm saving one of the best for last, the current Vader, which is about to wrap up. I'm really just kind of waiting for it to wrap up so you can just read the whole series in a run. But right now, we're going to talk about that. But don't forget, you can also check out all of the other podcasts that are part of the Certain Point of View family. That's everything from Another Pass with Case Aiken, to Fun and Games with Matt and Jeff, to Reignite, to the Scruffy Nerf Herders, and all of our streaming online with our gaming. And I'm sure there's more fun stuff to come from the Certain Point of View family as we continue to grow, as we continue to add people to this group of nerdy casters, I guess.
Yes, nerdcasters, I believe is the term you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that works. You can check out all of that activity on our website, certainpov.com. Right now, let's get into these comics. So, Star Wars Volumes 3 through 5, I gave you quite a bit for us to read. And I had read Volumes 3 and 4, I hadn't read 5.
So, in typical fashion for myself, I waited till the last possible moment.
Oh, of course you did.
To read these. And so, I think at 2...
Yeah.
This is when I messaged you, hey, I need the password, blah, 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 blah.
You messaged me at 12:30, but I was at lunch.
Yeah, so I didn't get it until 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And of course it was a busy day at work.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh God, I'm just cramming all this in. I think I messaged you near the end of the day, oh my God. I thought this was going to be 3 comic books, not
6, 7 for each one. Yeah.
Yes.
Including an annual in one.
Yes. I was like, oh my God, this is so much.
Yeah.
This is a lot. But that being said, I loved these books.
The Star Wars title has been very strong, the main title.
Oh, this is really so good.
This is one that we're going to be keeping up with week to week. Once we catch up, as each issue comes out, we'll review them and talk about them and sort of implications for the story and for the Star Wars universe. And even sort of the bigger, as we like to also go into, sort of the lessons from it as well. So,
because I got thoughts.
Yeah?
I got thoughts.
So
we'll save it. We'll save it.
Okay.
We'll save it to the end because it's all about the Yoda one.
Okay.
So we'll save it. We'll finish with that.
Yeah. All right. So to kick off with the first volume, Rebel Jail. This is one that I actually really liked a lot.
I did too.
What's interesting though is they took Star Wars Annual number 1, which had happened quite a while before this particular run of the series actually happened. So if you had forgotten, if you hadn't read Annual number 1 for a little while, there was a little bit of a mystery with this. What's really cool is this is right after the events of Vader Down, where there's a little bit of a crossover event with the first Vader Marvel series and this Star Wars title. That's the one where Vader learns that Luke is his son. Is sort of reasserting his dominance as the Sith apprentice after the failure of the first Death Star.
Right.
Great series. In the course of that, Dr. Aphra, who's an archaeologist, sort of an evil maybe a little too definitive.
She's morally flexible.
A morally flexible Indiana Jones is basically what she is. And she's working for Vader, so right. She's not a good guy by any means.
No,
but she is a fun character.
She is super fun. You can understand why she became a fan favorite very quickly.
Yeah, and she is
though her outfit's so dumb.
yeah. But she was captured by the Rebel Alliance.
Yep.
at the end of that event.
Yep.
And we kind of start off in a rebel prison, which has got a really sort of interesting concept. It's basically in right
It's at a
next
sunspot.
Yeah, it's in a sunspot. So it's the sun. Sun's always there. It's always it's always day. It's pretty warm, and it's basically in a very difficult to get to spot. So in the course of that, though, the prison is attacked, but not by Imperials, by someone who's associated with the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah.
And who feels that is trying to teach Leia a lesson by saying that we've got to
toughen up. If you're going to win this fight, you've got to be willing to You've got to be willing to make the same choices that the Empire makes.
Right, which Leia's not willing to do. She feels, she's a little bit more committed to her ideals, whereas he is just going through and killing all these prisoners left and right. He's popping them out of airlocks.
He's just melting them in the sun.
Yeah, shooting them in their cells. And it's insane.
Forcing Leia to fight him because he releases 7 of them to attack her, and it's good.
Yeah, it was also very interesting to see the nature of some of these POWs. Like some of who they were.
Yes.
Like that one, they're a couple moths apparently.
Yes. Yeah, that was a fun little tip.
But some of these special ops Imperial.
What do they call them? The D something.
The depopulator.
Yeah, the depopulator.
Yeah.
is like the depopulator.
That's like an 80s action movie.
It made me think. It was like, is he a tick villain? Is really where I was like, oh, that's a horrible name,
right?
Because when he comes, he kills everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was a really cool concept with that.
It was fun.
But so you end up, the big reveal is that he's a character who was the main character in Star Wars Annual #1.
Yeah.
An Embraer who was an operative.
Spy,
one of many operatives on Coruscant.
Yeah.
Who attempted an assassination on Emperor Palpatine.
And that story was so cool.
Right?
That story was great.
I have read that story. This was actually my 3rd or 4th time reading that story.
Yeah.
It's so good every single time.
That's a fun
Even
story.
though, I knew the reveal.
Yeah.
But it's still, the way it unfolds.
Yeah.
Is so good. That is a Star Wars, a Star Wars spy story like that.
Yeah.
Would be great. Yeah. That's a movie worth that's a good one-off movie worth. It potentially could be a TV series as well, but it could definitely work as a one-off movie as well. So I thought that was a great story, some great reveals, some great twists and turns.
Yep.
And of course a really interesting villain is sort of created out of that. Mm-hmm. And a villain that we don't really see that type of villain in a lot of Star Wars.
That's one of the things that I really liked about these 3 books is that you get some different looks at the Star Wars universe. You get the darker side of the rebellion in these stories of they're trying to do a political assassination and they're spying and the fallout of that and what leads to that, and they're killing, they've got these prisoners of war and what that means and the ethical ramifications of that. And then you have one of the other later stories, which is looking at it through the Stormtrooper's eyes of why being a Stormtrooper has been a great thing for people. And what the benefits of the Empire have actually been.
Sergeant Kreel is such an interesting character. And he's so badass.
So badass.
I still want to know why he has a lightsaber though.
I can't wait to find out.
I know. Maybe we find out eventually, but I haven't found out yet. So I'm looking forward to it because I've read this again I've read that so many times in my attempts to catch up.
Yeah.
So it was a nice reread again, but his monologue of sort of his mentality and why he is proud to be part of the Empire and why he's proud to hunt down and kill rebels is fascinating.
It's great, and it makes total sense. When you're reading it, I found myself going
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
This makes a lot of sense. Like this sounds like an American. This sounds like a lot of the things that I hear like American quote unquote patriots talk about of like reason, like, hey, this is giving me reason to live, and I've found purpose in this, and to do these things and to help bring order and stability and safety. And,
and some places that needed it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Not just imposing your own
like
imperialist.
because he comes from like a very it's a
very violent,
slave trading type of environment. His parents are killed and all this stuff, and he's forced to fight in slave pits, and the Empire comes and rescues him. Like that's a good thing. That is a good thing, and I love the fact that they put a little morally gray aspect to the Empire there finally, because you very rarely get that in the Star Wars universe.
Exactly.
It's usually cackling, wildly evil people.
Yeah.
It's nice to see like, oh no, there's some subtlety that we can inject into these stories a little bit. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's one of the nice things about these stories is they're myth. And so you can kind of build off of that, and it's a great analogy for America. It really is. Like that Stormtrooper story is a great story about America, imperialism, and our military might and stuff like that, and the things that we're doing that we take pride in and don't really think about in a lot of ways of what's really happening in the world at large, but that's the kind of things that are happening in the world at large. And even though we justify them in our own minds and our own society and our own culture, but that's what's happening, and from somebody else's point of view, we consider them terrorists, but they consider themselves freedom fighters.
Yeah.
So where do you draw that line? How do you make that distinction?
Yeah.
It is very interesting. A very complex story for a Star Wars story especially.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I totally agree. And that leads into Volume 4 where, we got to see this backstory for Sergeant Kreel and for his squad.
Who are badass.
Yeah. Super badass.
Stormtroopers.
Yeah.
You've never seen Stormtroopers this badass.
There's some really, I remember the first time I read this comic going through, and there were a couple moments where I saw a couple panels and I was like, I screenshotted it. I was just like, these are just so cool.
They're like, huge hulking Stormtroopers.
Yeah. Just like the variation in the squad is really cool.
The squad is so badass.
Yeah. Yeah, they need to. That needs to be playable, for sure. Like they need to bring that. They need to bring that squad into Battlefront.
Yes, I would be all about that.
Yeah,
because that squad is dope.
Yeah, for sure. So we got a little bit of that, but that was also a lead-in for another big, Alliance side story where you have you sort of have. Well, it starts off with this big dogfight, this incredible space fight.
Super detailed.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Beautiful.
Some of the spreads look so amazing. Mm-hmm. Like I found myself just lost in it, just looking at like
there's so much happening.
The X-wings just kind of lost in the sea of TIE fighters.
Yeah.
With the big Star Destroyer in the background, man, like that was such an amazing,
such a cool shot in a movie to see. That would be amazing.
Oh yeah, but it's still incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
on a comic book page as well. Very very cool story where basically they fake the destruction of a Star Destroyer so they can hijack it and use it to break a blockade. I will also add something. This blockade actually makes sense with the way they lay it out.
Yes.
There's not a single donut in space.
And that's it. They've got
There's
this thing
multiple moon bases,
and plenty of destroyers and TIE fighters everywhere,
and they're deploying them to the other sides of the planet, and like that. Like this is a legit blockade.
Yeah, this one makes sense.
Like this isn't the kind of blockade where, like, if you lived in America, like you're the only ones who are really blockaded. But if you left from Japan, like you're fine.
You're fine. You didn't even know there was a blockade,
right?
This blockade's legit. This one's legit.
So that was. But what's really fun with this is you have a skeleton crew for the Rebel Alliance trying to basically get the Star Destroyer up and running as best as they can, as they try to break this blockade.
To deliver supplies to this world that has helped the Resistance in the past.
Yeah, exactly. That's helped the rebels in the past, and but in the course of this, you get some really interesting moments between Han and Leia as it's setting up sort of their romance. I will say that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
So Han makes it like they're bickering over who's the captain of this Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
Han wants to be the captain. Of course, Leia wants to be the captain. And so Han bets her that whoever can race to the bridge first gets to be captain. It's the dumbest thing.
But it's so fun.
They're so ridiculous. So she's like, I can't believe you did that. And then she just kicks him in the knees and starts running.
Right. And I love the reaction of people around them. Where like, oh my god, it's so sickening how much they're in love and they don't even know it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. It was funny.
But that's a part of Star Wars that I think some people sometimes gloss over because you remember a lot of serious moments. But that's one of the great things, like, you know, Your Highness, you know, those types, like those kind of moments are also a big part of Star Wars as well.
Yeah.
Scruffy looking nerf herders, you know, like all that's like that's still some
walking carpet.
Yeah, exactly. And you got Chewie trying to repair,
trying to fix his Star Destroyer all by himself, and everybody's yelling at him to get this
just
thing
like
done.
He's trying to do it on the Falcon in Empire, you know.
Mm-hmm. He's just screaming and hollering at everybody.
It really felt like a good precursor to Empire.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. It felt good. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. It was a good story, and it was really well drawn, really well told.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like, just how I was reading the panels and looking at the art and stuff like that, and just, like, how youthful those characters are.
Yeah.
And I was just like captured in that time of like, wow, like when Carrie Fisher was young and everybody was young and exuberant and not the old
broken down.
Can barely walk anymore. Actors that they've become because age is a motherfucker.
Yeah.
But it was just so cool to see, and it was like, it's great that those characters and those portrayals of those characters live on in art like this, because we'll never get that again.
Exactly.
We'll have to recast those characters to retell those or to tell these stories. Yeah. So it's cool to see those actors portrayed in that way, and the art is so good. Like, it really pulled me in. It was brilliant.
I'm a big fan of the art on this, particularly on this run.
Yeah,
because it's just like enough to feel like the character without trying to like overly detailed with the recreation. It's a little bit more of an impression of them.
Yeah, there's still the impressionistic aspect of it, and not the perfect rendering of.
Yeah, exactly. So, I will add that one of the other stories we got in this volume is we also got an excerpt from Obi-Wan's journal as he.
I really liked this one.
The protecting Luke?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked this one, because this is a story that I always wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Like, when people are like, oh, I want an Obi-Wan movie, I'm like, nah, I guess. I mean...
This satisfies that.
Yeah, this satisfies that. This is really all I need of that.
Yeah.
Of just like, this is what life was like for him and what he was doing.
Yeah, and this is actually the second time. There was a previous story.
Yes. Yeah, but this one was really cool because he really kind of the conflict between him and Owen.
Yes,
is really interesting and their dynamic of how Obi-Wan is protecting this family and Owen resents him for it.
Yeah,
is really interesting. And Luke is just Luke. It was interesting to see Obi-Wan's perspective of Luke, how much he is like Anakin.
Yes.
And how that concerns him, but also is well, maybe this is the fulfillment of the prophecy at the same time.
Yeah,
it was interesting.
The faith of Obi-Wan is always one of those things that I'm always fascinated by, because he's that guy who is he accomplishes so much.
Yeah,
but he's not the chosen one.
Right?
And he's. Ultimately, he's still a secondary character. As much as, he's a main player. But ultimately, he's one of those guys to help elevate the people around him, and it's fair because it's like even in his relationship with Qui-Gon, it feels that way.
Yeah,
but he is he's that faithful servant.
Yeah. He's the John the Baptist.
Yeah, and I love he's such a fascinating character for that. I even I love the just even the detail of him having to put on the air. There's a moment where he's fighting the disgraced Wookiee Black Hurstan,
who's awesome,
super cool. And there's a moment where he appears and he talks about doing a little bit of meditative practices to not show that he's heaving from he's just so tired and exhausted
from climbing up the side of the mountain.
Yeah, and it's a great bridge between the Ewan McGregor and Alec Guinness portrayals.
Yes,
because you have the experienced warrior who's maturing in his exile, but you also still have elements of that cocky, snarky, who's the guy who throws out those one-liners at Grievous.
Yes.
He is still the negotiator.
Yeah.
He still has a little bit more of that confidence.
Yeah.
Even though he is a broken man,
Yeah, and he's getting older, and it's not as easy as it once was. Yeah.
So it's it's such a fascinating in-between moment.
Yeah, that's a fun moment to explore that character.
Yeah.
It was good, and the freaking Wookiee is so badass.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And he just whoops the hell out of him.
Well, they both do.
Yeah.
Because he's taken some abuse from him.
But only because of Owen.
Right.
If Owen hadn't been there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
He would have wrecked that Wookiee.
He would have owned him, yeah.
He would have wrecked that Wookiee's day. He sends that Wookiee packing.
Yeah, he does. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, but it's fun. I really like that story.
Yeah.
So, and then the last big story. Well, we got another one too, but we'll talk. Do you want to save Yoda for last? We'll talk about the annual and then come back to Yoda.
Let's save the Yoda for last.
So then we also had Star Wars Annual number 2, where we had sort of a mission where Leia was injured, trying with some intel, and a character, a brand new character. I have a feeling she'll probably show up in more of the comics.
I guess.
But someone who's sort of a neutral on the sideline, former engineer whose industry and livelihood was destroyed basically by the war and doesn't like the Rebel Alliance as much as she doesn't like the Empire and just wants to stay on the sidelines, she rescues Leia, saves her, helps fix her up some of her wounds, and eventually decides to actually ends up having to escape her home planet with Leia. Mm-hmm. But they have some really interesting conversations between the two of them about the importance of sort of standing up for sort of what defines Leia as a character, I think. And just sort of her idealism, but also her leadership and how she leads and how she inspires people in the Rebel Alliance, and why fighting is the right decision, and why not just standing aside, as a neutral party, as a third party, why that's not what you should do. So I thought it was an interesting conversation.
And it also highlights the cost of her decisions too.
Yes.
Which is really and the
that's
price.
Where it gets,
that's where it gets deep, and
particularly with Alderaan and how she kind of deals with her decision that ended up with the destruction of Alderaan.
Yeah, and what that means, and how the rest of the galaxy reminds her of that apparently constantly.
Yeah,
because when she's like, I always think about one thing with you, and she's like, it's Alderaan. She's like, yep.
Yeah,
and Leia knows this, and she's obviously been confronted with it before, and she says it's something that haunts her, and that that she has to deal with. But like you said, her philosophy and her belief that you have to do something and you have to fight against injustice and intolerance is something that drives her and drives the rebellion, is ultimately what leads this new character, and I can't I forget what her name is.
Posh,
that's it. To see jeez.
Sorry.
You scared the hell out of me.
We're leaving it in. I'm not editing.
I'm not editing tonight. I've come too far. is what leads her to kind of see things and join the rebellion and realize that she can't stay on the sidelines either, that she wants to be part of this. So I thought it was a really good story, a really interesting story.
Yeah.
A nice, again, different viewpoint of Leia than we've gotten before.
Right.
Which was really good.
Yeah. I also, personally, and I want to say it's the same artist who did Leia in her...
series.
Yeah, in her little mini-series.
Yeah.
I love that particular style
of Leia. Yeah. She's super adorable.
Yeah.
But also, like, very confident.
Yeah, like, you get enough, like, power, but you get the grace. Like, it just, there's something about that.
Captures her really well.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and then you also had the droid episode, too, with R2.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
It's completely forgettable.
Yeah. It was a cute, like, sort of a cutesy back issue.
Yeah.
Backstory.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the big chunk, though, of Volume 5, though, is Yoda is sort of is entitled Yoda's Secret War. Tell us about this, actually.
They should have called this Yoda H. Christ. Is what they should have called this. Because this is the idealized... In my mind, like, this is the idealized version of Yoda. Like, we get old and kind of wizened Yoda in the original trilogy.
Right.
And then we see sort of, like, all of his foibles and everything that's wrong with Yoda in the prequels. And then we got a nice moment with him in The Last Jedi. This story is really, like, the epitome of what a Jedi is and should be and what they do. In their idealized form, in my mind. Yoda is somewhere, and he's going to get some kid who's got force powers, and he beats a bunch of pirates to get the kid, and all by himself, and sends him off with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's like, oh my god, how did you do it all by yourself? And then, like, Yoda says, oh, I just felt like a disturbance in the force, I'm getting called to go somewhere else, and they're like, well, I didn't feel anything. He's like, well, I guess it just must be for me. So he goes flying off to this planet that's uncharted and really difficult to get to, surrounded by all these rocks and meteors and stuff like that, lands, and is confronted by basically Lord of the Flies kids. And it turns out there's no adults. It's just these two warring tribes of children on this planet, and they've got, like, these weird blue rocks that they can use as, like, force powers and stuff like that. And they have this whole, like, rock versus mud people thing going on, and they cast all their enemies into this mountain to look for the heart of the mountain, and nobody ever comes back. So, but here's where I really liked this story was, and maybe it's just because I've been doing a lot of reading and listening of Christian stuff lately. Yoda is, again, he's the ideal version of the Jedi, where he's not confrontational.
Yeah, he's seeking peace.
He's seeking peace in every step of this confrontation between these two people. He's looking to bring everybody together and to bring them all as one and to end this conflict. He's humbling himself and to learn what's going on around him and where he's at. He's very meditative. He's very Buddhist in his style of, like, I'm just here to learn. I'm here to whatever happens. If I die, I die. I'm not looking to die, but if that's where this leads to, at least that'll be a new experience. Like, there's just so much just, like, religious messages of truth in this particular myth story that really, like, rung true for me.
Yeah.
And I loved this story. As I was reading it, I was like, yes, Yoda gets it. Yoda understands what this is all about. Finally, like, we're seeing Yoda, like, in, like, prime Yoda mode of, like, before his exile, but also, like, not completely, decrepit and used up.
Well, something that really emphasizes the mysticism of who he is and what the Jedi are, as opposed to the action hero.
Yes.
That they sometimes sometimes.
Well,
people
what he
remember
was
them
in the
as.
prequels,
Yes.
right? Which is what he really was in the prequels.
Yeah.
Is like, oh, nobody's a better lightsaber dueler than Yoda.
Which they still establish that he is still very powerful.
Oh yeah.
But they channel it in a very interesting direction as far as, one, trying to resolve a conflict that is rooted in sort of the misinterpretation of self and identity.
Yes.
Where his search for self is not really a search for self as much as it's a search for wisdom that's tempered by extreme humility. I found that so fascinating, that his search for knowledge, his search for wisdom, his search for perspective and understanding was truly, was the most important thing to him, and ultimately the thing that helps him win.
Right.
And the thing that helps bring peace in the end to this conflict. The other thing I love about this is his willingness to treat someone else as a master.
Yes.
To learn from them. Now obviously he's put into circumstances that force him to understand he doesn't know everything. Immediately, coming off of a mission where he manhandles people, and then going to a place where he's so out of his element, that the rules of him are completely changed.
Yeah, completely reversed.
By this force empowered rocks, basically. Right. That ends up being part of the living mountain. I think was so fascinating for a character like that, who is so overpowered, who is so insanely capable.
Yes.
That having that dynamic was done very well. It wasn't
right.
forced, but it was so true to the character.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that what he does, though, and the message of the story for me was, because he learns that to feel the living rock,
yes.
and reach out with the force and be one with the living rock. And he realizes, and I think that's sort of the power of Christianity, of Buddhism, of all your major religions, is when you get down to it and you really look at the core essence of it, is to realize that we are all one.
Yeah.
There is no other. There is like the whole root of this conflict is tribalism, right? Yeah. And it starts with the adults, right? And the adults started this conflict a long time ago, and it got out of hand, and the kids are continuing this conflict, even though they've banished the adults away.
Yeah.
But the kids are still carrying on this conflict. Spoke so much to me of what we see happening in American culture today, of
tribalism,
the tribalism and all the fighting and all of that. This has just been going on and on and on, and it's just sort of snowballing, and it's created its own momentum and its own weight of tribalism. And these messages of oh, wait, that's not really what's happening here. We're all the same. We're all the same. We're all human. We're all on this planet. We're sharing this whole existence together. Whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, whether or not you're gay or straight, whether or not you're a nerd or a jock. These are such superficial, limiting ideals and descriptions and ways to view the world. And there's so much more depth to it. Right. There's so much more under the surface of what it means to be alive and what it means to be a human on the planet right now. Is really to me the essence of this story. This is what Yoda is teaching these people, and teaching when he goes and he fights the rock mountain monster guy, and he just holds it off by himself. He holds it off by realizing, I'm one with this mountain. And the mountain can't crush him because they're the same thing. And you won't kill yourself. If you're the same person, if there is no other, you're not going to hurt them. You are only willing to attack. You're only willing to get angry and defensive, and if somebody or something is the other, and that's sort of the idea of forgiveness. of like if you're willing to forgive, like when Jesus says like be willing to forgive your enemies and love your enemy, as yourself. That whole idea of like, well, if you forgive somebody, they're no longer an other, they're no longer an enemy. You're the same person. Now you can sit and you can talk to them. Maybe you need to have healthy boundaries with people, but you don't hate them anymore. There's no reason to war. There's no reason to fight. And that to me, like this story just encapsulated that. So this story encapsulated the story of Christ and the New Testament so well.
Yeah.
In my mind, it was so good. I was just like, this is the best sermon I've heard in probably 6 years. It was so good. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Like this guy, whoever wrote this, I didn't even look to see who wrote it.
Yeah.
Gets it. Like gets it so well. Whether or not they even know they get it, they get it.
Well, I think it's such an interesting thought as far as what we need for unity and on what conditions.
Right.
And boiling that down to such a personal level, I think is so important, because I think that attitude is something that it can be very tough to handle. Like, how do you affect change as an individual, And, you can either, get discouraged by lack of progress, or, you kind of grow weary in doing well, or, you just kind of see it as futile, or, there's a lot.
Or you pick up arms and fight.
Yeah,
and fall into the myth of redemptive violence.
Exactly. So, like, you end up in this really weird space with all of that I think the idea of like wisdom and discernment, Yoda is really able to bring that out in a very interesting way. He's able to really kind of focus in on like, okay, what does someone who seeks wisdom, someone who seeks knowledge, like, and by default, seek knowledge, like, how does that translate to bringing about peace in this situation? And I think that makes this particularly fascinating. That it is possible that there is a way to still look at each other without necessarily tearing them down, because, you're not necessarily willing to give up of yourself. Because ultimately, that is sort of the answer that this provides, is that giving up of self is the way to end some of these issues.
Right, and your attachments to things that truly don't matter.
Right.
And it's interesting because there's a really interesting moment where he's talking with the parents. He finds the parents in the cave, and they're like, "This isn't our fault. We don't, and he doesn't buy it at all.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't put up with that shit at all. He's like, "Oh no. This is your fault, and they deserved better than what you gave them." And I love that he doesn't let them off the hook for the wrongs that have been done.
Exactly.
But he also offers a way out of like, oh no, yeah, you are at fault here, but we're going to fix this.
Yeah.
Like we're going to teach them the right message.
Absolutely.
And I love that. Again, this was such a good encapsulation of the Christ story, and the lessons of Jesus that were, it's so good. Like there's so many moments in there. I was just like, yep, there it is.
Yeah.
Yep. That's that. Yep. Nailed it. Nailed it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It is. I definitely recommend reading these 3 volumes. These are some great comics. These are some great expansion of the Star Wars universe to really help pull and expand what Star Wars is, but to also allow us to delve into who the characters that are part of this universe are. And I'm excited to read some more of this series and some of the
If they're this good, it's going to be amazing.
I'm excited for you to finally read Vader.
I know. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm putting it off because I know it's wrapping up soon.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to start.
Right? So, anyway, you can let us know what you think of these comics if you've already read them, or if you get a chance to read them. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to chat with you guys. We are on Discord pretty much all the time. You guys can join our Discord channel and be a part of all of our conversations there, not just for a certain point of view, but for all the other podcasts that are part of the Certain POV family. Again, you can go to that on our website, certainpov.com. And until next time, though, stay scruffy, my Nerf herders.